I spent $437 on commercial deer attractants over 3 seasons. I kept every receipt because my wife asked me to, and when I added them up in January, I wanted to throw the calculator through the window. That's $437 on products that did roughly the same job as $2.25 worth of Kool-Aid, brown sugar, and rock salt. Not the same product, the same job. Get a deer to a specific spot and keep it there long enough to photograph or shoot. $437 on powders, pastes, liquids, blocks, granules, and one product that came in a squeeze tube like toothpaste and smelled like someone melted a candy bar in a tire fire. I ran every one of them in front of trail cameras on the same property in the same locations during the same months. Some of them worked. Most of them worked about as well as a pile of corn, which made me wonder why I wasn't just using corn. And a few of them sat untouched for 2 weeks until raccoons found them, and the deer never showed up at all. Then last April, a guy on the GON forum posted a recipe that stopped me cold. 3 ingredients. Total cost, about $2.25. Grape Kool-Aid powder, brown sugar, and rock salt. He said he mixed it up, poured it on the ground next to a trail camera, and had deer on it that same evening. Not the next week, that evening. They came from Downwind. They liked the smell. His recipe was 4 pounds of sugar, 1 pound of salt, and 10 packets of grape Kool-Aid. But he said the ratio didn't matter much because the grape scent was the main draw. His son tried cherry instead of grape and got the same result. Multiple hunters on Archery Talk confirmed that cherry works, grape works, and one guy even reported success with watermelon flavor on hogs that crossed over to deer. The consensus across forums is that grape and cherry are the 2 most effective flavors, with grape being the most commonly recommended. I've only tested grape, so I can only speak to that one. The reason grape seems to dominate the recommendations is probably that grape flavoring contains methyl anthranilate, a compound used commercially as a bird repellent, but one that mammals, including deer, seem to find attractive rather than repulsive. That's speculation on my part based on the chemistry, not published deer research, so take it for what it's worth. I read that post and did what any reasonable person would do. I assumed it was nonsense, closed the browser, and forgot about it for 3 weeks. I've been hunting long enough to be skeptical of anything that sounds too cheap and too easy. The hunting world is full of guys who swear by things that don't hold up under any kind of testing, and I've wasted enough money on their recommendations to fill a truck bed with empty bottles and broken promises. Then I saw another post on the Pensacola Fishing Forum with almost the same recipe. 2 pounds powdered sugar, 2 pounds baking soda, 2 pounds mineral salt, 3 packs of grape Kool-Aid. A poster said he used it years ago, and it worked great, but warned that if hogs are anywhere close, they'll show up too. Then I saw it again on Archery Talk. A hunter ran a side-by-side experiment with 2 corn piles, one soaked in grape Kool-Aid and one plain. The deer ate both, but the Kool-Aid pile disappeared days faster. He said it was more of a curiosity thing than a true attractant, meaning the scent pulled them in from distance, but the consumption was what kept them on the spot. A deer hunter forum poster took it further. He mixed cherry Kool-Aid into a mineral salt site and said it was topping it with something sweet-smelling that made the deer find the site faster, sometimes within the hour. An Archery Talk poster, who'd been using grape for several years, said they crush whatever you put it on, and his method was to mist a tree stump with water, sprinkle the Kool-Aid powder on it so it sticks, and the deer gnaw at the stump trying to get every grain. An Iowa Whitetail forum poster shared his version. Granulated red mineral salt mixed with cheap grape Kool-Aid from Walmart. Simple and direct. A Bowsite poster from Missouri tried sugar, salt, and 10 packets of grape and had deer on camera that same evening. That was enough independent confirmation from enough different states and enough different hunters that I stopped assuming it was nonsense and started testing it. That testing process and the 76 other tricks I've run through the same protocol are what I organized into the Buck Hunter's Bible. 90 pages, every trick with the biology behind it, scent control, attractant chemistry, stand placement, rut phase tactics, and a chapter of old-timer methods. There's a reference card in the back you can print and take to the stand. Links in the description below, or scan the QR code on screen if you're watching on a TV. Here's what I found over 4 months and roughly 40 trail camera checks of testing across 3 sites on 2 properties. What works, what doesn't, and the one problem nobody on the forums warned me about that almost ruined the whole experiment. The mix I settled on after testing 4 variations is simpler than most of the forum recipes. 1 packet of grape Kool-Aid, the unsweetened kind that costs about a quarter. Half a cup of brown sugar, not white, because brown sugar contains molasses, which adds a second scent layer and a stickier texture that clings to whatever surface you apply it to. And a quarter cup of coarse rock salt, the kind you'd use for making ice cream or de-icing a sidewalk. Total cost per application, roughly $1.50 if you buy the ingredients at Walmart or Dollar Tree. The grape Kool-Aid is doing the heavy lifting on attraction. The active scent compounds in grape flavoring are esters, the same family of volatile aromatic compounds I talked about in the persimmon video. Esters are what make fruit smell like fruit, and they travel on thermal currents the same way any volatile attractant does. The grape scent plume from a fresh application on a stump reaches at least 50 to 75 yards downwind on a calm morning, and further on, a day with light breeze. That range is comparable to vanilla extract and slightly less than pure anise oil, which makes sense because the ester concentration in Kool-Aid powder is lower than in a pure essential oil. But the cost difference makes the Kool-Aid approach viable for large area coverage, where you'd never waste $3 worth of anise oil on a single stump. The brown sugar is doing 2 things. First, the molasses content adds a sweet, earthy scent that complements the grape and broadens the scent profile so the deer is detecting multiple signals simultaneously, which triggers more investigation than a single-note scent. Second, the sugar gives the deer a caloric reward when it arrives. This is the critical difference between a curiosity scent like vanilla or anise, where the deer investigates but finds nothing to consume, and a consumption attractant, where the deer arrives and stays because there's something to eat. A deer that finds vanilla on a wick spends 10 to 15 seconds sniffing and moves on. A deer that finds Kool-Aid and brown sugar on a stump licks, gnaws, and works the surface for 2 to 3 minutes. That dwell time is your shooting window. In camera data, the difference between a deer that spends 10 seconds at a vanilla wick and a deer that spends 2.5 minutes at a sugar-treated stump is the difference between a blurry photo and 30 clear photos, with antler detail you can actually use for inventory. The rock salt is the repeat visit mechanism. Sodium drives mineral craving in whitetails the same way calcium and phosphorus drive antler craving, except sodium craving runs year-round, not just spring through summer. A deer that finds salt returns to the same spot daily because the mineral need doesn't go away after one visit. Sodium is the one mineral that whitetails cannot get enough of from natural vegetation in most of the United States, especially more than 25 miles from a seacoast. The Kool-Aid pulls them in from distance with scent. The sugar keeps them on the spot for minutes. The salt brings them back tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. I had one site where the same doe and 2 fawns visited every single evening for 19 consecutive days. The sugar was washed out after the first rain. The salt stayed in the soil, and she kept coming back to lick the dirt long after the sweet stuff was gone. 3 ingredients, 3 functions, each one doing a different job in the attraction cycle, none of them redundant, and that's what separates this from the single ingredient tricks like vanilla or anise. Those work as curiosity scents, but they don't give the deer a reason to stay or a reason to come back. This does both. Now, here's how I apply it, because the method matters as much as the mix. Find a stump or a downed log within camera range of your setup. Mist the surface with a spray bottle of water so it's damp. Sprinkle the dry mix directly onto the wet surface. The moisture makes the powder stick instead of blowing away. And as it dissolves into the wood grain, the scent compounds leach into the stump itself, which means the stump continues releasing grape scent for days, even after rain washes the surface clean. An Archery Talk poster described this exact method and said the deer gnaw at the stump, trying to extract every grain from the wood. He said some of his stumps look like a beaver got to them after a full season of deer working them. That gnawing behavior keeps them stationary and focused downward, not scanning for threats. If you're bow hunting, a deer with its head down gnawing a stump at 20 yards is as close to a guaranteed draw opportunity as anything in the woods. If you don't have a stump available, dig a shallow bowl in the dirt about 18 inches across and 6 inches deep. Pour in the mix, add a cup of water, and stir it into the soil. Same principle as the dicalcium phosphate wet hole method. The minerals and sugars bind to the soil particles, and the deer consume the mineralized dirt, which is how natural mineral licks work. The dirt application lasts longer than the stump application because rain pushes the compounds deeper into the soil instead of washing them off a surface. After 2 or 3 rains, the deer are digging into the dirt to get to the sugar and salt that leach down. The same consumption behavior you see at established mineral licks. I've had deer excavate a hole 8 inches deep at a site I started with 6 inches. They dug past my original application depth, chasing the minerals down. Refresh weekly with a fresh handful of the mix sprinkled on top. Now, the problem nobody warned me about: raccoons and hogs and ants. The sugar component in this mix is a magnet for every sweet-toothed scavenger in the woods. My first test site got demolished by raccoons within 48 hours. The Pensacola Forum poster warned about hogs, and he wasn't kidding. If you hunt anywhere in the South where feral hogs are present, this mix will draw them before it draws deer. A GON poster said he tried a similar sweet mix and had the biggest ant bed in Georgia history at the site by the end of the week. The workaround for raccoons and ants is the soil application instead of the stump method. When the mix is stirred into dirt 6 inches deep, surface scavengers can't access it as easily. The ants are the hardest to defeat. I've reduced the sugar ratio in my mix specifically because of ants, going from half a cup down to a quarter cup on my summer sites and accepting slightly less dwell time in exchange for not feeding every fire ant colony in the county. The hog problem has no workaround. If you have hogs, don't use this mix. Period. You'll create a hog wallow at your camera site, and the deer will avoid it because hog scent at concentration is a deterrent to whitetails, not an attractant. Now, the legal reality. This mix is bait in every state that defines bait as any food, grain, or consumable substance placed to attract deer. That includes Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Minnesota, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, South Dakota, and every other state where baiting is fully banned. In Michigan and Wisconsin, it's banned in CWD counties. In many other states, it's illegal on public land, but legal on private. Some states allow minerals and salt, but prohibit anything with food additives, which means the sugar and Kool-Aid push this mix into the illegal category, even where plain salt would be fine. A Minnesota DNR page specifically states that if a salt or mineral product has anything other than salt or mineral in it, it is illegal to use for hunting. The Kool-Aid has sugar derivatives. The brown sugar is a food product. This mix is unambiguously bait in any state with a feeding or baiting restriction. Check your state regulations before you put any of this in the ground. This is not a gray area. If your state bans baiting, this mix is banned. Use it for camera surveys in the off-season, where legal, or as a year-round supplement on private land in states that allow it, but do not hunt over it, where the law says you can't. A confiscated rifle and revoked hunting privileges are not worth saving $2 on a bag of attractant. I use this mix exclusively for off-season camera surveys and year-round supplementation on private land where it's legal. During hunting season in my state, I pull all bait 10 days before the opener and hunt over the residual site with nothing consumable on the ground. I need to be honest about something else. This mix is not magic. It's not going to outperform a food plot. It's not going to pull a buck from the neighbor's 200-acre bean field to your 10-acre woodlot. What it does is create a localized high attraction point that deer within 75 to 100 yards will investigate based on scent, consume based on sugar content, and revisit based on salt craving. For trail camera surveys, that's more than enough. For supplemental attraction near an existing stand in a state where baiting is legal, it's a legitimate tool that costs less than $2 per application compared to $15 to $25 for the commercial equivalent. When I broke down the ingredient list on a popular commercial deer attractant from Cabela's, the first 3 ingredients were sugar, salt, and artificial flavoring. Sound familiar? The deer don't read the label. They read the scent plume and the sugar content, and both are identical whether the powder came from a camo bag or a Kool-Aid packet. The commercial deer attractant market is full of products that are fundamentally sugar, salt, and artificial flavoring in a camo-printed bag at 10 times the markup. An Archery Talk poster put it perfectly. There is no way something that costs less than $1 will attract deer. We all know you have to spend over $15 or it won't work. He was being sarcastic. But the sarcasm hit close to home for me because I spent 3 years doing exactly what he described, paying $15 for something I could have made for $1.50 because the packaging told me it was different. It wasn't. The deer at his place didn't care about the price tag. They cared about the grape scent from 70 yards out, the sugar on the stump when they arrived, and the salt that brought them back the next evening. Everything in this video, plus about 60 more field-tested techniques, are in the Buck Hunter's Bible: scent chemistry, attractant biology, stand placement, rut tactics, and a chapter of old-timer methods. 1-page reference card in the back for the stand. It's in the description below, or scan the QR code on screen. I'll end with the failure that taught me the most about this mix. Second week of testing, last July, I had the stump sight dialed, deer hitting it nightly, good camera data. I got greedy. I doubled the sugar and added 2 extra packets of Kool-Aid, thinking more scent and more reward would mean more deer. What I got was a raccoon convention. 11 raccoons on camera in one night. 0 deer, not one. The raccoon scent at the site was so strong by the 3rd night that the deer avoided it entirely for the rest of the month. I didn't just lose the camera site. I burned it. I scrapped the stump, moved 200 yards to a new spot, waited a full week for the raccoon traffic to die down, went back to the original recipe with half the sugar, and the deer returned within 2 days. The lesson was the same one I've learned with anise, with vanilla, with every attractant I've tested. More is not better. The dose that works is less than you think. 1 packet, a 1/4 cup of sugar, a 1/4 cup of salt, mixed onto a wet stump or stirred into a shallow hole. That's it. No mixing bowl, no measuring cups, no special equipment. $2, 3 ingredients, and the discipline to not overdo it. The deer don't need you to try harder. They need you to try smarter. And the raccoons are always watching, waiting for you to make it easy for them. Don't. The recipe that works is the one that's barely there. Enough to smell from 75 yards, enough to taste when they arrive, not enough to turn your camera site into a raccoon buffet. That's the line, and it's thinner than you think. Every attractant I've ever tested punishes you for using too much and rewards you for using just enough. The guys who've been doing this for 20 years on the forums all say the same thing: less is more. The deer's nose is 4,000 times more sensitive than yours. What smells like nothing to you at arm's length is screaming at them from 80 yards. Trust the chemistry. Use less than you think you need. And check your state regs before you put anything in the ground.